Hello, and this time we're looking at finding the highest common factor and the lowest common multiple from prime factors. Now, in another video, I talked about how you can get these things from a list. So if, let's say, you had 12 and 20, let's say, you could list them. You could say, well, 1 times 12 and 2 times 6 and 3, that's a 2, 3 times 4 and 1 times 20, 2 times 10, 3 doesn't go, 4 times 5, and there we are. And so for the highest common factor, we want the highest number that's a factor of both of these, and it's common, that means it's a factor of both of them. It's the highest factor that's in both. So 20, no, 10 isn't in it, 5 isn't in it, 4. 4 is the highest common factor. Now that's fine when you've got small numbers, but I don't really want to have to write out a list of all the factors of 450 and 360. They're quite big numbers. They're going to have a lot of factors. And when we get onto multiples, then sometimes these multiples are going to go on forever. I'm going to have to, this is such a bigger number than this that writing out all the multiples here, it's going to take a long time. So it doesn't seem sensible to do that. So there's another method where we can use prime factors. And in another video, I explained how to find prime factors by saying it's two numbers times, and you keep breaking up numbers into primes until you've got everything, and then you can write down the prime derivation, how many of each prime times together to give that number. But because this question is not about finding primes, yes, we need them, but we don't need to show how we do the method. We can use the calculator. So 450, we just type 450 equals shift fact, and this is 2 times 3 squared times 5. Was that right, or did I misread it? 3 squared times 5 squared. And 360, we'll do exactly the same thing. 360, press equals, shift, nope. Try that again. 360, shift fact, 2 cubed, 3 squared, and 5. 2 cubed, 3 squared, and a 5. 204, whilst we're here, we may as well do them all. Shift fact is 2 squared times 3 times 17. And 1296 is 2 to the 4, 3 to the 4. Okay, so that's the calculator telling us what these things are. How are we actually going to find the highest common factor and the lowest common multiple? Well, for the highest common factor, we need numbers that go into these numbers, okay? So we're looking for prime numbers in both. So it's primes in both derivations. I'm going to put lists, but just to make it simple. Primes in both lists, both products. It needs to be a prime in each of them. And the primes that are in both, that we have, we're going to choose and the smaller power. Now you might think that's odd. It says the highest common factor, and yet I'm choosing the smaller things. Surely I want the higher things. Well, no. The higher bit is not, yes, it's not higher and smaller. There, it's factors. Factors are smaller than what numbers you're looking at, and that's why we want smaller powers. Because this one has 2 cubed in it, great, but this one doesn't. This only has a 2 in it. And as we're looking for what numbers go into both, 2 cubed doesn't go into this, but 2 does, so we can take the smallest. So for this one, for this pair, the highest common factor of these two is going to be, so we've got 2 in both, and I choose the smaller power. So 2 is smaller than 2 cubed, so I'll have the 2, times the 3's in both, and actually these 3's are the same. They're both 3 squared, so it doesn't matter which one I have. They're both the same. And then 5 squared and 5, the smaller one is 5. So I'm going to take the smaller power of the prime. And I'm not going to work that in my head when I've got a calculator here that is less likely to make mistakes if I type it in right. 2 times 3 squared times 5 is 90. So that's our highest common factor. What about our lowest common multiple? Well, our lowest common multiple uses all primes. Now, not all primes in the world, but all primes in the lists. So if it's in either of them. It doesn't have to be in both. It can be in one, not the other. We use it. We use all of the primes we've got. And if it is a repeat, we're going to use the bigger power of each prime. Whoops. So in fact here, they're all repeated. So I'm just going to use the bigger power of each of the primes. So 2 and 2 cubed, I'll have the 2 cubed. Thank you very much. The 3 squared and the 3 squared, well, they're the same, so it doesn't really matter. And the 5 squared and the 5 squared is the bigger power, so I'll take that one, thank you. And then reach my calculator to tell me what this number is. What is 2 to the power of 3 times 3 squared times 5 squared? And the answer is 1800. 1800 is the lowest common multiple. Now I've got another example here, just to sort of show you, a bit different in numbers now. They've both got 2s, they've both got 3s, but this one has a 17 that one doesn't have. So for the highest common factor, we're going to use the shared ones. 2 squared and 2 to the 4, well, 2 squared is smaller, so I'll have that, thank you. 3 and 3 to the 4, well, 3 is smaller than 3 to the 4, so I'll have that. And I don't need a calculator for this one. That's 4 times 3, which is 12. The lowest common multiple is going to use all of the primes, and if they're repeated, the bigger one. So 2 to the 4 and 2 squared, I'm going to have the big one, 2 to the 4. Between 3 and 3 to the 4, I'm going to have 3 to the 4. And between 17, well, actually, there isn't a 17, so I don't have to compare it. There isn't 17 in this one, I mean. We've got a 17 here, so I'm going to have a 17. If it had been 17 squared, I'd have had 17 squared. Yeah, it doesn't matter. If it's just in one, you just use it. If it's just once, you use it, and its power. But it's only if it's in both of them that you choose the bigger one. And I think we'll use the calculator for this, because that looks like a bit of a grotty calculation. So 2 to the power, 2 to the power of 4 times, no, got to press the right arrow, times 3 to the power of 4, press the right arrow, times 17 is 22032. And that's it. I found the highest common factor and the lowest common multiple. Please don't leave your answer as all the timesy. That's how you work out. So you're kind of like sharing the numbers out. So, you know, I'll have you in there and you in there, and yeah, the answer is working it out. Now, the last thing to say, I'm going to get rid of all of this, is what if you've got lots of numbers? So I'm going to look at 3 numbers instead of just 2. Well, it works in exactly the same way. Okay, so get a bit of space. There we are. So let's look at these 3 numbers. The highest common factor, well, it has to be a number in all 3. So 2 is in all 3, and I choose the smallest for the highest common factor. 2 cubed, 2 squared, 2 to the 4, 2 squared. 3 is in all 3, and out of 3 squared, 3 and 3 to the 4, I choose the smallest. 5 is not in all 3, so I'm not going to use 5. 17 is not in all 3, so I don't use 17, and that's it. I've checked all the different primes. So the answer is just 12 for that one. And for the lowest common multiple, I look through all of them, and I use any primes that are there, and I make sure I use the biggest power of any that are repeated. So 2 cubed, 2 squared, 2 to the 4, that's 2 to the 4. 3 squared, 3 and 3 to the 4, I'm going to use 3 to the 4. There's a 5 there that's not anywhere else, so I'll have that 5, thank you. And there's a 17 there that's not anywhere else, so I'll have the 17. And I think it's a calculator time again to work this one out. 2 to the power of 4, arrow, times 3 to the power of 4, arrow, times 5 times 17. And that equals 110160. And there's our answers. Highest common factor, lowest common multiple. And you can do exactly the same if there's 4 numbers. You just have to make sure for the highest common factor, they're numbers that are in everywhere. So if you did look at all 4 and you say, well, look, 5 is repeated. Yeah, it doesn't count unless there's a 5 in every single number. So you have to be careful. Highest common factor, it has to be represented in every number, and even then you pick the smallest powers. Lowest common multiple, it can be in 1 or more numbers. As long as it's in one of them, you include it and you choose the biggest power if it is repeated. If I've missed anything, if you want to ask any questions, pop them in the comments. Otherwise, ta-ra for now.